Call the park board meeting to order. Can't believe it's January of 2019. It was just, we were just worrying about Y2K. Like a couple years ago, weren't we? You know, it's like, God. Y'all had a chance to go through the minutes that were in the last packet. Are there any changes, corrections, or omissions that anyone caught? If not, move to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion
I
carried.
actually had a question.
Yes.
Ron Weiler is listed as present and absent.
Yes, typical, but should we pick one?
Sorry.
He's gone.
He was gone. Yeah.
Be gone from the rest of it.
We can't pick on him.
Okay.
First item on our agenda is to move right into the Rotary Group's request for coming into the Taste of Hudson into the park this summer. Mike, you want to?
Yeah, so this is a new event being proposed by the Rotary to host in Lakefront Park. Mary and Tom are here tonight to present and ask any, or have the board ask any questions that they seem necessary. They came to the last council meeting, asked for permission from our last public safety committee meeting, and got approval from them. Now we're coming here, and then ultimately we'll probably take it to council for final approval. So take it away, Mary.
All right, we're proposing the Taste of Hudson. You've heard of this kind of event at White Bear Lake and St. Paul, and we'd like to start it here on May 23rd. That's a Thursday night from 5 to 9, so it's early and it's only a half a day, and that gives us that morning to set up. And then we will mount some sort of security on it overnight. We've asked the police for time and a half to pay them to cover the nighttime shift. And then it will be removed the next morning probably, but day for sure. So we don't think we'll need a third setup day. And as far as the park goes, we will be fencing the entire area and to allow only 21 and older inside because we are applying for the temporary picnic license with the wine and the beer. And we have set a preliminary price of $50 on a ticket, all in advance, nothing on site. We're hoping to set up a website, so if they show up late, they can just go on their phones or wherever to a computer and buy a ticket. So we're worrying about safety and security. We'll have 2 gates are marked, unless you think we need 3. We sent the plan, the proposed plan. Did you have that in front of you?
There's a map in your packet.
map.
Yeah, it's pretty much a setup that,
Yeah.
within variations of course, but of boosters, that you're controlling the space real well.
Thank you.
Only 2 entrances, you know, you don't have to worry about that much of keeping your arms around it and what's going on.
Right. And we'd like to use the picnic tables from the park, if we can get 20 of them that day. And then we just have tables in the tents. We're up to 37 vendors. We're hoping that maybe 5 of them would be wine and beer at this point. So. We're expecting possibly 500, we're hoping. And of course, it's fundraiser for both Rotary clubs. I'm sorry, I didn't say Tom Van Pelt is co-chairman on this with Brian Hines, and Tom's in the Daybreak Club, and I'm representing the Noon Club, but it's both clubs. And so the funding that we raise all goes to, most of it entirely goes to local charities, like 98% of our club goes all local.
Good.
So we've talked to some of the restaurateurs ahead of time and got their support before we even started. Pete Foster is one. Who else? Pete.
Yeah.
So we're asking for your approval to start this as an annual event if it works out for fundraising.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll
Chair
move
will
to
entertain a
approve.
motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Is there any further discussion, or does anyone have any questions of it?
My only thought would be looking at the plan. First of all, I think it's a great idea, so I hope it's a huge success for you guys.
Thanks.
And I love the angle of the local groups benefiting from it. I think that's completely awesome. So my only question just on the layout, not the layout, but on that sheet, was the number of restrooms. Do you guys have, I don't know if that's 4 or 5 there.
4.
just if that's gonna be enough for your, what you hope to draw. I don't know what's usually done, but that's maybe just a thought to think. I don't know if there was another place you could put them to or something, or have two different areas or something, so. That might just be something that you guys plan. It's the first time, so you never know really what you're dealing with, so. But just be a thought to keep in your mind as you head toward it, so.
Thanks, yes, we can do that.
Good idea. Chair will call the questions. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Great.
Thank you.
Sounds like a great
It's
event
fun.
to have in the
Good
park.
luck.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda are the fish sticks.
Fish sticks, so,
And Buck Malik is here.
yep.
We can cast our questions to him. Regarding it. Bad pun.
So the placing of fish sticks was brought up, well, fish cribs and fish sticks was brought up at a recent Urban Forestry Committee meeting. Seeing that we're gonna have an abundance of ash trees, thinking of ways outside the box to utilize some of these trees within our community and how we can kind of repurpose those things. And Buck kind of informed me of this, fish sticks, fish cribs, that type of thing, and kind of tying in with the fishing piers that we're proposing to do on Lake Malibu, creating, a fishing habitat and kind of, increase the fish in that area. And so Urban Forestry Board recommended placing these fish sticks and bringing it to Park Board to get your thoughts and final approval to place the fish sticks along the bank on the southwest corner of Lake Malibu. So Buck is here to answer any questions, but I guess I'll just kind of walk through what fish sticks are and kind of how we place them, how we hold them. So basically, fish sticks are simulating downfall on a shoreline. We're just placing it there instead of the tree just naturally falling into the water. The trees are placed, in groupings of 3 or 4, creating that fish habitat. They're anchored to the shore so that if the water ever does come up or down, that they're not washing out into the lake and falling. So, the DNR supports these types of projects for fish habitat. Again, in the packet I included kind of the location, the fishing piers that we're proposing to put on down there, kind of putting the fish sticks in those general locations. So that's kind of the idea behind them. And Buck, if you have anything to add, or you're just here to be a...
I saw it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Malik, 413 Brookwood, town of Hudson. I saw it on the agenda. I thought it was interesting. I've been, conducting these little fishing events on the south shore of the Southwest Bay, a relatively underutilized part of Lake Malibu. And the idea of those concrete fish piers, which evidently you know something about those too, is that in the packet somewhere? We're going to apply for a grant that can cover 3/4 of the cost. And the other part, we have on board the County Sportsman's Alliance, the Village of North Hudson. I expect favorable action from the Star Prairie Fish and Game and the St. Croix County. It has an annual allotment based on fishermen's license fees, which is doled out, I believe, according to population, and then has to be matched by the county. Well, for purposes of the DNR grant for the piers, we can't count the DNR grant for the so-called county aids, but we can count the county's money. And that's fine. And so that's how we plan to put together the deal for 3 piers on the south shore, which if some of you have been down there, there's a power line there, but the power line doesn't interfere with fishing. It's those of you who grew up in Hudson probably have memories of fishing there over the decades. I've encountered lots of people who've been here longer than I have who have that kind of memory. Some of the people who come here more recently find it a not very attractive place to fish because it's not very good parking. Sometimes it's muddy. The particular shore bank is rough. It grows vegetation that's not attractive, and so on and so on. So I encounter all the time people who ask, well, are there any fish in there? Yeah, of course there are fish in there. It's approximately 11 feet deep, and it falls off not too far from the bank. You can cast if you want to cast, and you can get out there into the deepest water without too much trouble. But the piers will help because did you get a picture of the piers
Yeah.
too? The ones that Mike took a few years ago? Yeah, well, it just hangs out over the water a short distance, but it's enough so that with a cane pole or anything, it'd be great. So we got the piers in there. We take some of those ash trees that we've got to dispose of anyway in some fashion. And as Mike described it, we get them out there on the ice probably during the winter is the best time to do that. And chain them up so they don't go drifting around and getting into boat props or any of that kind of stuff. And I think the science with respect to underwater fish habitat like that, both the fish sticks and the cribs, is that they don't really create more fish. They sort of keep the small fish from being eaten by the big fish, you know, and maybe that in some sense grows more fish, but it also means less food for the big ones. So, but what they do is they sort of concentrate the fish. So I believe that most of that Southwest Bay is relatively featureless, shall we say. It's pretty much just a, well, to be honest,
Mud flats now.
a mucky bottom.
Yeah.
Because that's the last place where the fines that are coming down, like from the removal of the dam in
In
State
Richmond
Park.
on down.
Yeah, from the Richmond on down, the last bridge or last dam that hasn't been removed. That's where the fines end up. The heavy sand drops earliest at the head of Lake Malibu, and the fines drop at the end just before going through the dam or the spill. So it's kind of a soft, flat bottom out there without much feature. And so it's an ideal place to put some stuff that would hold fish. And that's the idea. Now, we've touched base with the DNR fisheries lady for our area, and she'll have to issue a permit for whatever we do in navigable waters, you know. So we'll get free advice on the exact placement and the method and the like. I expect she will tell us that ash trees are not too great for cribs. That is, they won't last too long. The best
Oak's a better
practice,
Yeah.
waterwood.
yeah, the best practice is usually to use oak and green oak at that for the maximum length in around here in this part of the country, you know. But if that's all we have, well, we could use ash. They just wouldn't last as long, but they still would probably last at least a decade. Mr. Casanova.
What's the chance of getting them over by the fishing pier on the east side of the bridge, of the Lake Malibu Bridge going to North, where the Dairy Mart used to be?
Why not?
And the other side of the bridge abutment, that bay in there, and all the way around that point. I mean, there is that rocky shore used to be attractive to fishing and kids and everything.
Yeah, I think
You
you're
know, I
absolutely
mean,
right.
even on the North Hudson side to do it, but we want to stay clear of the boat launch and all of that, but to improve the habitat through there, it would,
Yeah.
you know, when all the elms dropped and landed in those that did that landed in the water all the way up through the head, it was fabulous fishing and the like around for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. And what I envision for that area is, you know, that kind of that area has been identified in the St. Croix Bike and Ped Master Plan as a connection from Hudson to North Hudson. You know, if you just picture a nice, you know, walking trail, maybe over that rail bridge, some nice fishing piers with habitat, you know, kids can ride their bikes up there in an afternoon during the summer and go fishing. You know, it just provides opportunities that really aren't convenient right now for safe fishing. So that's kind of what I have in my head anyways, and it's a start anyways to get something going on at that facility, because like you said, it's kind of underutilized right now.
We talked about porta potty going in there with, you know, proving that if it's only class 5 for parking down there for now. But part of our plan to cover the whole area through there, and it'll probably include a couple of street lights to make it safer at night, and, you know, that kind of thing. I think we'll all,
Oh,
as we do our,
Yeah,
well,
great
we've got to
ideas.
put it into our master plan, if it's so, and
Yep.
Mike's doing our master plan, and so anything like that that you can think of that we can throw into the master plan in appropriate areas, if it's in the plan, we can do it. And,
Right.
you know, those kinds of things that, as we look around and see, let's try and get them in that plan.
Yeah. So I think for tonight's purposes, I'm just looking for a motion to approve the fish sticks and apply for the proper permitting through the DNR for the placement of them.
Move to approve.
Second.
And I
Any-
guess consistent with the chairman's comments, if they'll allow it, you might apply for a multi-year permit and for a pretty vague definition of where, so that we can, you know, expand over the years as we have ash trees to work with, and
Yeah, okay,
South Shore, North Shore, east and west of the bridge.
okay.
Thank you for letting me comment.
Thank you for them.
Mr. Chairman, do a lot of boats utilize kind of that bay? Do a lot of boats go underneath the bridge there? And is that something that we'll have to be aware of when we're placing these? Or is that kind of, do people not go underneath the bridge
No,
there?
people go underneath the bridge and they go through the center
Okay,
section.
okay,
Yeah, and we're going to want to keep anything far enough away from the drop line underneath the bridge, because kids still do jump off that bridge and swim in the summertime, mostly on the North Hudson side where it's deeper.
okay.
But,
All right. Well,
yeah.
thank you.
And any cribs, it's obvious, but any cribs have to be kept a certain distance below, that the DNR sets below the surface, you know.
Mhm.
But that's, since we manage that, since the city manages that by controlling the water depth of the dam, you know,
Mhm.
it's not as sensitive as it might otherwise be. You
Mhm.
you can count on the fact that.
Yeah, that's below average prop depth.
Here, it's gonna be at exactly the same height.
Mhm.
Do we need to have any kind of markers initially where these are going? On the, to help keep folks away from that, or?
I wouldn't think so, because I think we'd be below.
Yeah.
And I'm
what
focusing,
the DNR will tell us.
for this winter anyways, I think we're focusing on just the fish sticks, and then we'll kind of revisit the fish cribs at a later date, maybe the following winter, but, and the fish sticks are close enough to the shoreline where, you know, if you go down Ebony River, they're sticking out 15 feet, maybe 20 feet, it's the furthest that they stick out, so I mean, it's not, if you're going up against, if you're in a boat and you're that close to the shoreline, you're asking for trouble anyways.
Yeah, they'll be getting casting from
Yeah,
to them.
yeah,
Yep. Yeah, the bass fishermen will, and the sunny fishermen, I mean, it'll help the whole thing. So there is a motion, we didn't vote on it. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Thank you, Buck. Another great project. Okay, our bathhouse concessions.
so,
Yep.
do you want to, I got it, okay. So every year, well, you probably know better than I do, Deb, but the current tenant failed to notify the city of his intention to reapply for his permit to sell concession stands out of the bathhouse this year. And so staff is recommending to the board one of two things, either going out for RFP for another individual or company to come in and take over the concession stands for 2019, or look into opening it up to local organizations to utilize for special events, weekends, so on and so forth, as a fundraiser for them as well. So I guess I'm just looking for direction from the board on which path they would like to kind of go down for the 2019 season.
It would be nice if we, my opinion, it would be nice if we could get a vendor who's going to be there consistently all the time. Our maintenance for, and repairs from vandalism plummeted when we have somebody there.
Yep.
The current people don't want to stay. Or they don't?
They just never contacted us,
Yeah.
and so, you know, and it's, apparently it's been reoccurring where we always have to reach out to them and kind of entice them to say, hey, you're gonna come back, and it's just, you know, we have other things to do than to babysit, so, if they're not interested, they're not interested.
My personal opinion would put it out for RFPs.
Okay.
See what you get for a response.
I think it makes
Downtown
sense.
is changing.
Right. I mean, I think if someone wanted to come in there and, I mean, it allows for a food cart, you know, so on and so forth. If there's opportunities down there that if a company wants to come in and put in the time and the effort, I think there's opportunities to make some revenue, so. All right. So I don't know if we need a motion or just proceed to
Yeah, just proceed with it.
direct staff to
Yeah.
go for
I have
RFP.
a question first, though.
Yep.
There's mention of exclusive rights for that, and so I guess I'm wondering, I like the idea of being able, or of local nonprofits or organizations being able to do some fundraising if that's something they might be interested in. Could we open up maybe a cart or something along those lines on the dock or on the, I'm sorry, on the
Toll Bridge Road?
pier, or would that be an option to tweak the language in the contract a little bit to allow that?
Well, you're picking that person's pocket. Their ability to, the operator, not current one, but if the intent was that it gave the operator the ability to have a cart, to be able to not have to rely on people coming specifically to the beach with little ones to swim there, but to be able to take the cart and go out to the end of the dike.
Sure.
And to the people in the lake who are out there. They never really did that.
Sure.
A couple times, other vendors did, but current vendor never did. I think someone could work it a whole lot better and be more successful down there, especially given all the walking traffic and everything else that's down there on the nice days. Granted, you're there on all the crummy days too, but I think putting it out for RFPs, I think they get the first shot. If we were going to do something for the groups, to do it in a way that it's not competing with a vendor like that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Doing it at the boat launch at Picnic Point. A group could do it and sell hot dogs, and you've got restrooms there, you've got people launching boats and all that kind of activity that really isn't the same activity as up on the other end, that kind of thing. It's just a thought on my
Sure.
part.
Okay. So currently, I mean, during Booster Days, the Booster Club gets access, and that's in the contract, correct? They get access to the, okay.
So Mike, do you need
for
a
them.
motion to put out the RFP?
No, I just think,
Okay.
from what I hear from the board, is just directive to go for RFPs, and then once those are returned, then we'll take
Okay.
action on that at that time. Yeah.
Our next item up is the helium balloons. Came back up. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was a directive from Pam for city staff to look into, the use of helium balloons within our parks. And Deb reached out to a couple different communities and found some resources online. And Pam contacted the DNR this morning and got some information from the DNR that pertains to this issue as well. And, in our city code, it references littering in public spaces and how it's not allowed within the city. And if you think of it logically, if you're releasing helium balloons in a public space, that's considered littering, And so I guess, from the research that Deb found and Pam's conversations with the DNR, what I would recommend is we would add it to specifically add it to the park reservation policy so that people are aware of that. I mean, granted, you're not going to catch everybody. Every group is going to see that document, but at least you might catch 50% of the
And it
people.
might pause them to just think.
Yeah,
You know, I bet the thought hasn't crossed a lot of people's minds.
Yeah.
that, oh yeah, we let go 100 balloons, they all come down.
right,
You saw somebody throw 100 balloons out of a car window,
yeah,
how would you feel?
Right.
You know, I mean, until it was first brought up to me, I never had thought it.
oh, right, it's something you really
Thought
don't think
through,
about
you know.
it until, yeah. So I don't know, Pam, if you want to add anything, or Deb, I mean, I think that's the logical thing to do, is just to add it to the park reservation policy. I don't know if we want to post it on a sign or not. How often does it happen? A handful of times every year, I don't even know.
So are you thinking a threshold of X number or
None.
no
I say
releases
none.
at all? or-
None.
None, yeah.
Yeah.
Releases, I mean, the problem we have is birthday parties, people bring balloons and.
Well, it's different if it gets away from Timmy or Mary
Yeah.
when they're playing with it,
To
then
release
you just
kids.
release
Yeah,
a whole bunch of them.
yeah. And I think that's the operative word, is release, You're going to have birthday parties where people tie them to the rock or the confetti bag or something like that, and oops, what do you do in those situations? But when you got a gathering where you're releasing 50 to 100 to 150 of them at one time, that's what we don't want to see.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, just to add it to the park reservation
Reservation.
policy.
Well, and it's certainly not to impede or prohibit folks from celebrating or recognizing, but maybe perhaps doing that in a different way based on some of the information that we received.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you need a motion on that?
Yeah,
or-
yeah, let's make
So I would move to add the, to add that line about banning the release of helium balloons in city parks to the park reservation policy.
Your second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. It'd be nice to have something that they could, remember those things that that girl put out for the bees that went all over town? You know, if you want to throw something off the hillside up at Prospect Park, throw those little seed balls
Right.
of wildflowers down or something like that to grow, or,
Yeah, an
You know,
alternative to
yeah.
something that will do good for the city. Yeah, that's a good idea.
The other item we have is our restroom and warming shed going in out at, that we want to do out at Grandview.
All right, so for the board tonight, I want to get some direction on kind of the size, the type of amenities, what you'd like to see in the building, because I want to contact some architectural firms and have them give us some numbers as far as the overall, design, how much it's going to cost, draft some construction documents, that kind of that thing. But so I'm looking for, the board's, and I listed in the issue sheet, kind of the dimensions. How many people do we want to have at this pavilion? I know previously we talked about kind of mirroring White Camp Park. Is it something that we want to have that same size? We kind of want to reduce it. Number of, the restroom stalls. We want lighting, water availability, a serving counter, so on and so forth. So in your packet, I attached, I pulled some designs that were given to us during the White Camp RFP process. So on the back of the field map is one design. It's smaller in nature than White Camp Park. And then the one from Elliott Architects is the actual White Camp Park pavilion that we constructed up there. So, I mean, and this can be an open conversation. How many people do you want? Do you want to match what we have at White Camp?
The original thinking was, A, to help save on costs and having to re-engineer and redesign and redo each time we go to do something, was to be able to do it once and tweak it the next time, making it better, but not have to go back to square one with fees and everything else.
That makes sense.
What I would, when I thought about this more and was looking at it, one of the things that came to my mind that I thought would be really helpful would be if we were in that space out at White Camp, looking at it And now I'm imagining it at the other
Right.
location,
Right.
the different types, and all of a sudden, we're gonna have a lot more adults than kids. What are we gonna need for urinals? What are we gonna need for, expansion of, how much are the staff gonna need out there for storage? And looking at where we tweak that in there. And then if we are going to put the panels in to make it part of it a warming house, what kind of a magnet is that going to be in terms of draw?
Sure.
And kids and skates and storage, I think that, being in that space, I think would really be helpful
Okay.
in trying to get our mind's eye around the space and what would fit.
Sure.
What's the capacity at White Camp? Do we know?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, no.
It's 120.
Yeah, that would, yeah.
Yep.
So have we had feedback from folks that have used White Camp? Do we get any feedback on things they'd like to see or any enhancements or things that they really, really appreciate having up there?
Just, I suppose we get some feedback back, but not specifically asked that. It's more
Sure.
just,
Yeah.
Was the reservation fulfilled to your expectations? And probably 90%, 99%. I mean, it's pretty high. That we get really good feedback.
And I think we're also going to have
Facility, yeah.
to look at with that then, is that going to help increase our draw of people to there?
Up to Grandview, you're
Yeah.
saying? Okay.
Now that, we've got the dog park people
Yeah.
in there, we're going to have potentially pickleball being up there and more tennis.
Is this gonna be a rentable space?
Well, there we go. And if so, do we want
Birthday
to,
parties or?
like we do at Prospect and in White Camp now? So I think there's a
Right.
pretty long checklist of stuff we can come up with of saying, what's the future look like? And what kind of demands will that put on the space?
Right.
The little shelter on the east side of the playground, that's reservable right now.
Oh, yeah, that's reserved quite a bit, actually.
So we do have one shelter up there that we do allow to be reserved for parties, like,
Did you show the location on here?
No. So, and this can be changed, of course, but the location that I was first thinking of is, if you look at the map, kind of on the top of the page, you can see Castle Park. You see the shelter to the east of Castle Park. If you just go kind of across the trail to the south, you kind of have a big open space just beyond the center field fence. Kind of right in this location here. That's kind of where I
Yeah,
was.
that's where it's,
Oh,
That
so
was-
you thought it was going.
Oh, up there, okay.
So that's kind of where it's proposed in the master plan, and I think that's a good location to have it.
in that area, is that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Near the playground, close to the parking lot. I don't really want to tuck it in the back of the park for vandalism reasons. So that's kind of the general vicinity that I was thinking. Does the board agree with that?
That and the street from that intersection down to where the dog park is was designed to be flooded, to be a rink.
Okay.
So that puts the warming house close to that as well.
Have to skate to the dog park.
We're gonna.
It'll be a yellow rink.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And then, Pat, just for, we had talked about in the fall, possible pickleball courts to that's on the bottom of the page then? Am I thinking right?
It'd be on the top of,
Or it'd be on the top there?
yes, top of this one.
Oh, in that corner there? Okay, right, so that would just be a little bit of a distance to it, but I don't think that's a huge deal, right?
No, it's
If they wanted to use
just,
those, if they want to use those restrooms is what I'm thinking or something for
yeah.
that. Yeah. They would just walk that path, basically.
Would it be good to have our next meeting
Yeah,
out there
I think so.
in that space and we can think about.
That might be hard in
It's
February.
February. I'll have
Why
my
can't?
Oh, I thought you meant at,
We don't have to be long.
No. But I think we need to
Meet
get
here.
we need to get the process going, because by the
Yeah.
time we pick and choose what we want, if we go through with Elliott Architects again, just have them kind of copy, maybe shrink the size a little bit. I mean, we want to go out for bids on this, April, May at the latest.
Yeah.
So we can get constructing it. So,
So if we went out there and we could meet here first,
yep.
cover other business,
And then
reconvene out there, adjourn here, reconvene out there, look at that space,
Yep.
talk about it real quick, and then we'll have enough to,
Make recommendations for,
Yeah.
okay. Any changes that we want to see?
yeah.
Okay.
So the funds for this are coming from,
So the funds for this, two places. Parkland dedication funds, and I got money approved in the CIP plan as well, CIP plan. So I got $250,000 approved in the CIP, and then we have an additional $125,000 approximately in the Parkland dedication funds.
and is that associated with where the park is located?
Yep.
So we had talked about the categorization of the park,
Yep.
and if it's a neighborhood park or if it's a community park. Did we get clarification on how this is categorized, and if we're going, when you take a look at everything that's in that park, is it a community park rather than a neighborhood park? And does that provide some opportunity for additional
Rating the
Funding.
line, erasing the line between north and south of 94, and being able to use dedication fees from south of 94 to be used for a community at large
Right.
Park,
Right. If
as
that's,
opposed to just south of 94.
So I spoke with Catherine this morning, Catherine Monkitrick, the city attorney, and I put out an email to her just to kind of confirm that we can use Parkland dedication funds for this project. Parkland dedication funds have their restrictions because the dedication funds are collected from developments when they go in, and they have to, the money that is spent needs to serve the development where the funds are collected from. And that's what she told me. So, for example, a majority of these funds that we have available were probably collected when Carmichael Ridge was put in, and she can justify using those funds for this project because of the vicinity to Carmichael Ridge. Now, if we were wanting to pull money from the south side, let's say, a lot of that money's from Red Cedar Canyon, Hudson Meadows, Heritage Greens subdivisions, she probably wouldn't justify using those funds for a restroom on the north side of town because it's not serving that area directly, and that's kind of why they split it north and south, just to give the park board a direction on, we can only spend money here and there. So, I mean, I can certainly ask her about, and clarify that question, whether neighborhood versus community, and if it's deemed a community park, which in all instances, from my experiences, it would be a community park. If that eliminates that line where we can only use, south of 94 and north of 94.
right. And I think, if you take a look at what we've done in that, with the dog park being through the city,
Yep.
and if we do the pickleball courts, that's a city, does that maybe support that kind of thinking for
Yeah.
that particular park?
Maybe you should ask her more in line of, can she build a case to support us in doing this?
Or could that?
Rather than getting her permission to do it in advance.
Or could that be
She gave us permission for the north side.
Or could that?
No, I'm quite serious. I think she answers the questions based on the way that they're put to them.
Sure.
And if this is something we want to be able to do, be
Well, we
able to
have-
use dollars from the dog track development to do something in another community park like this building, this is what we want to do. Now, how do you suggest we go about doing that to do it rather than can we?
Yeah, but I think for now, I mean, I feel comfortable with the monies that we have through the CIP and the Parkland dedication funds to help support funding this restroom. I mean, we're not we're not gonna build Taj Mahal. We have enough monies to, right now, currently set aside to build that structure. It's when you wanna start adding other amenities at that facility, that's where we would have to start drawing from the south, because we will use up a majority of that money north of 94.
Yeah.
So, because south of 94, it's approximately $420,000 in that fund.
Okay.
So-
And I think one thing we had talked about at one point was being able to put walls up so that it could be used year-round as a gathering space, or, you know, as an opportunity for folks to reserve and use for different events.
And there's a warming house. Yeah,
Yeah.
could be all those things.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it would rent out a lot. For skating parties, for people doing other things.
Do we have any
Outdoor
information
events.
on that skating rink up there? Do we have any information on that?
Plan?
Yeah, we do, okay.
Mhm.
Does it take up the whole eastern parking area?
It takes up, well, Tom would be able to
So
tell
like
you.
that,
That pretty
or the
much,
the south, I'm sorry, the southern
yeah,
parking
as you
area.
go,
You don't have the boards, obviously, to put them, so it's the.
but pretty much that parking lot that goes towards the, because this was all pre-dog park.
Well, that's just
That
it. Now,
whole,
with the additions of the dog park, is that still a place where you're gonna wanna put an ice skating rink and take up the parking? Because the dog park came after the construction of the design of that parking area. So, I mean, that's something that we're gonna wanna discuss as well.
You know, and that's a great point, is maybe we need to relook at the ice skating rink and maybe get a feel for how much use that would get, what's going to maximize the use in the park? And is there another park that might see more skating traffic, so to speak, rather than up there? You know, a park where families walk to or can, I don't know, but maybe revisiting that particular item.
Things to think about. You know,
There's
one thing to add to that is, you know, Burton Park, which is kind of where our current skating facilities are. In the year 2020, I got CIP monies approved to install permanent hockey boards down there, regrade the park, you know, as part of the discussions that we had. So, I mean, that'll be coming too, where we utilize our current warming house that we have down there. We have all the water access down there. You know, we'll shape it so that the water doesn't run out on the street, and when it gets warm, the water actually stays in the rink and refreezes. So, I mean, that'll be coming online here too, and those improvements will be made. So, you know, skating is popular in Hudson. I mean, it's a very popular thing to do in the wintertime. So, I mean, there's other options as well as other parks where we can add ice skating rinks as well. But it's
so we can look at it when we're out there.
absolutely. So,
Yeah.
okay.
So we'll meet here first and then adjourn, go out there, talk about that space and
Okay.
go from there.
Fair enough.
Perfect. New happenings in the parks.
Just kind of an update. Got in touch with the company that's going to be installing the parking meters downtown this spring, and at a recent park board meeting, we discussed the boat launch and the options down there. So the new parking meters will be able to differentiate in-state, out-of-state. It won't be able to differentiate
City or
city versus non-city residents.
So we can't,
So our current fee structure, where we charge $12 for non-resident, $8 for resident, we may need to alter that if the board chooses to do this, to go $12 out of state, $8 in state, or we can go just a straight $12 boat launching fee, or, you know, whatever you want to do. So there is that ability to differentiate in state, out of state, and that's kind of where I last
I think
discussed with the gentleman.
in the beginning, it was to give the citizens of Hudson a break, since it was their park and they were paying all the maintenance and everything else for it, that they got a break of parking places and a reduced rate. But if we can't make that distinction anymore, then it's just one rate. Would seem to make the most sense and most convenience, and sorry, We can't make it, we were limited on what we can charge and how we can charge and what it has to be, and
Yeah,
there it is.
yeah, okay. So, I mean, when we do go through with the installation of those meters, I mean, we'll have to discuss this at an upcoming board meeting to determine what we want to charge for the 2019 season.
Can we get a feel for what other area launches are charging, so where we fall in that?
Yeah, I can get that information.
I mean, not a ton, but just to kind of get a feel for, you
Yep.
know, if we decide 10 or where do we line up with
Yeah.
other launches?
Yeah, well, the maximum that we can charge is $12 based upon the
State park.
the
Sure.
state. So, I mean, that kind of limits us, but I can certainly look at other areas and see if they're charging $8, $10, $12, $5, and just get a feel for that,
15 and 20.
you know?
Yeah, we're under. We're the cheapest one
We have that information.
Yep,
in the area.
yep. So,
Mm.
so that's all I had for project updates tonight.
Anybody else have anything for upcoming meetings? Pam?
I did. We talked about Webster Park at the last meeting
Mm-hmm.
and how that's used. Could we maybe revisit that at another meeting to talk about possible activities, or, you know, if there's groups that maybe could, if we're going to use it for a garden, or if we're going to, you know, what we might be able to do with that space to get folks
Yeah.
in there?
Absolutely. I think it's a very good idea. Because it is an underutilized park right now. And it's not altogether user-friendly or clear to the point of where you're parking on somebody's yard, where you're parking on city park, or where you're in the way, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think, yes, we could do a far better job of defining that whole thing, making it nicer, and encouraging a specific use there would be nice.
Thank you.
Pam, did you want to bring up the Friends question or not at this time?
We talked a little bit, many meetings ago, we talked about the establishing a Friends of the Park
Yes.
organization. And so I think what we'd like to do is revisit that, and some of the folks that were involved in that discussion are here tonight. And so maybe we could have a follow-up meeting, or just something to kind of talk about what that would look like, and how to go about establishing that group to help with things, and maybe maybe something at Webster Park might be, or fundraising to help with projects that we've got a wish list of things that we'd like to see, and you know, what would that group look like, and how is it associated with the Parks Department, and those kinds of details?
Yes. I think it's a great idea. You know, and I think we should, in that same light, discuss and look at the Urban Forestry Board for how we incorporate their input into the parks that we have now, you know, at any future projects that
Right.
they see or want to do. Plus, it's another set of eyes, and it's more arms hugging
Right. Right.
the park. And the more that we can make it inclusive to more people in the community, we only end up with a stronger community.
Yeah. Yeah, for example, I mean, the Grandview restroom, you know, once we have the design work done, giving that to the Urban Forestry Board for their recommendations on species of trees, placement for shade, that type of stuff, you know, they're people that are knowledgeable in that area, so it would help, you know, like I said, get another set of eyes on the plans and
Yeah.
give their input, so.
And like we did what was influence they had in getting the goats last year
Right.
for Prospect and into the future, and the awareness that they just brought of the significance of that woodland to the migratory patterns of the birds coming through.
Right.
Made a whole lot more people aware of that, and went up and looked and saw.
Yeah.
So
Is that something we need with the, bringing the goats in? Was that was that a 2 years, right? What was the recommendation for the goats, to have them manage the,
I believe it was 2 years, yeah.
so did we have that incorporated into this year's budget or this year's plan? Okay, so we're all set there?
Yep.
Good.
Anything
I'm
else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, Pat. Yep.